All right, what's up, everybody? We're live. I'm here with Lester, and I'm here with Taylor.
Yay!
For the disappointed to not see us yesterday, Taylor had a Florida thunderstorm come through and rob her of power about 15 minutes before we were going to get ready to go. So thanks,
Awful.
Taylor, for sticking with it and coming on Sunday.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Yeah, it's those typical Florida thunderstorms that happen every afternoon, but yesterday's was a little worse. So
I pulled up the radar to see what it looked like, and there was a lot of red cells directly over Jacksonville. And it's interesting. It doesn't I think I'm used to seeing Midwest storms where almost all of them go from west to east, and they just sort of build and flow through, and you get these big sweeping thunderstorms, coming across Iowa and into Illinois, right? And you guys it was just like, no, we got these tiny ones that just kind of come right in
constantly. Yeah.
It's just so weird. Yeah. Florida's weird for a lot of reasons, but definitely that.
And especially having water on each side, like the Gulf Coast on one side and the ocean on the other, the storms collide also. So we get storms coming from each body of water, and that's what usually cause the real chaotic storms that happen.
Yeah. Well, and then you have things like hurricanes and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Nothing to us, but
fun stuff.
Those hurricanes are no joke down there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, Taylor's lived there most of her life, so I'm sure she's just it's like the weather reporter that's like, and we're having terrible winds, right? And then Taylor's walking in the back with her gym towel over, what, whatever.
It really is, and honestly, there's been scary ones. Jacksonville has gotten lucky, knock on wood. Just the way we kind of curve in on Florida, right on that spot, hurricanes just go right over us, and we'll get the outer banks of it to where we kind of get the wind and some rain. But we've gotten lucky to where it's been, I think since my freshman year, which was 2005, since we've had a bad one.
Yep, we had a land hurricane called a derecho a couple years ago, and that was pretty insane. I would like to not do many more of those.
that sounds like a made up name. What is it called?
It's called a derecho. It is not made up. It is a real thing, and it happened. And my hometown was hit the hardest, but the town I live in now, or the city I live in now, was hit pretty bad. We had a lot of damage. We lost a tree in our backyard, so that was bad. But all right, you guys ready to record a podcast?
Yeah.
All right, for those of you that are joining us, thank you for joining us. Hit up the comments, and at the end we'll take some Q&A and respond to what's on your guys' mind. But we'll record a Bear and Balance podcast and get going here. So let's get into this. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor-in-chief of Windy City Gridiron, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, how is your summer going?
It's going great. It's the last few days has been some bad storms in this area, but it's as good as it can be. We have a pool, so as soon as I get off this pod, I'm going to jump in and catch a few rays in the pool here.
Oh, nice. We are also joined by Taylor Dahl, who is the newest podcast member of our Windy City Gridiron podcast channel. Very excited. Taylor, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Better weather today, so we're good to go. But I'm pumped for this. We've been preparing, obviously, for about a month to just kind of see where our podcast was going to go. So I'm excited to kick it off this week. And with camp starting, it's perfect timing.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the show is going to be called and what the concept is for the podcast that you're going to be bringing with us?
Yeah, so the title of it's Making Monsters. The premise is kind of just based around all of the first contract guys, and that's a lot. As I was going over and kind of studying some of these new guys, I've noticed that out of the 90-man roster that the Bears have right now, 60 are on their 4-year or less, and a large portion of those 60 are 2 or less. So it gives us a lot of content because we get to kind of take all of these, and once we get into the season, we're going to focus more specifically on kind of a player per episode and really deep, dive into what they're doing for the team at that time. It may be because somebody got thrown in the week before, and that gives us a reason to talk about it. And maybe because there's kind of a battle going on at a certain position, and maybe because someone played terrible, and we're like, what do we do about this? So that'll be fun. During the off season, we're kind of using it as a way for everybody to get to know the young guys, because when you're looking at this roster, there's a ton, and you might not know a lot about them. There's a lot of competition right now, especially on that offensive line. That they did a lot in the secondary, so there's a lot of depth there and some battles in the secondary. We have some question marks at wide receiver, so there's a lot of fun things that we can kind of dive into. So I'm excited. But the whole premise is we're not going to forget about certain guys that maybe beyond that 4-year. They'll be talked about a little bit, but our whole thing is we kind of want to focus on the young guys, which fortunately for us also includes Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney and Roquan Smith, who we're hoping gets paid. So it'll be fun because there's just so many ways we can go with the rookie contract guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited about the concept. When we talked about it, it was really fun. I love the logo you came up with too. So people are going to start seeing that logo pop up in their podcast feed. So excited about everything. We'll have to have you on here or on Bears Over Beers when things overlap a little bit and vice versa. Really looking forward to integrating you into this. But first official appearance on Bear and Balance. We don't have a ton of guests normally. I mean, Robert popped in and out last season, but this is fun for us. I'm getting ready to go to camp. I'm going to be at camp starting on Thursday. Lester's going to join me on Friday and Saturday as well. I'll be at camp on Thursday with Sam Householder. And so we'll start bringing you camp coverage. Really excited about that. And that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about. We had some articles post on the website where we had some writers express what they're most excited about for camp. Now, Taylor, you didn't write one of those articles, but you'll be talking about that type of stuff here soon. So I wanted to go around and just kind of share that. Lester, you had an article post. What are you most excited about for camp?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's got to be Justin Fields. I mean, I'm usually the guy who likes the offensive lineman, but this year's O-line is, it's kind of sketchy as it is right now. So maybe that's something we'll definitely have a chance to talk about in a little bit here. But for me, it's Justin Fields. I mean, if Justin Fields is the guy the Bears believe him to be, the fans hope him to be, a lot of the analysts think he has a chance to be. If he is that guy, he will cover up a bunch of the warts on the team. I mean, if the line's bad, he can actually help that with his mobility, his decision making. Setting the pass pro. He has to know all that stuff to do that. To get everyone around him playing better. If he makes that step, I'm not saying playoffs. That's ridiculous. But this team will be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch his growth as the entire season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, what about you? What are you looking most forward to for this camp?
I think I'm looking forward to more competent coaching. I think that a lot of factors on this Bears team are going to come down to the coaching. I think that a lot of issues Justin Fields had last year that we saw where they were just not building around his strengths. And as a rookie quarterback, you especially need that. I definitely want Justin Fields to kind of step out of that comfort zone at times this year and learn some things and develop into a guy that is like an all-around guy. But when you have a rookie quarterback and you know what his strengths are, I don't know why they weren't building off that. So I'm excited to see what Eberflus is going to do, Ryan Poles, with everything they brought in. I know they didn't bring any massive, huge names in the offensive line, but there's some young guys there that have potential. And I think a lot of when people have the Bears ranked so low on the offensive line, I saw so many lists and they're like 32, 31. I think that's because there's just giant question marks because Larry Borum's young, Tevin's young. There's just so much youngness on that offensive line. And I think that also is going to be factored in huge to this coaching staff, because from what I've heard, they really want to kind of change that, like not just big, massive blocker guys. They want like the lean, athletic, quick, fast offensive linemen. So with that, hopefully that helps Justin more. I think with the coaching, hopefully so they can develop some of these other guys. I think Darnell Mooney is a really good wide receiver. I think we do need a big perimeter guy. I'm not quite sure if we have that, but I do think that the coaching could play a part in that. Getting Jones out there, he could be the guy. I don't know a whole lot about Pringle. When I talk about him, they're like, yeah, he's good, but not sure he can really solidify that role out there. But to me, I just think I'm excited to just see what this coaching staff can do in developing some of these young guys, because as I just mentioned, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I think, I put out a poll yesterday before we were going to try to record this yesterday. And I asked people what they were most excited about for camp. And the number one answer, the 55%, was Justin Fields. Justin was my prompt. And then the second highest answer was what you guys said, or what you just said, Taylor, which was the coaching staff. And so I think that's top of mind for a lot of people. I took my article a little bit different direction because I had been focused so much on the fan base this year. I was kind of obsessed with this idea that the Bears are at an inflection point. You just hit a nadir in terms of like the interest of the fan base in this product. It was such a hard grind to get through the season last season, particularly trying to be on a podcast or two every week and try to keep up at least with some level of energy and what to watch. And I wanted to see where the fan base was at. And I think overall, people are very excited about Justin Fields. They're willing to give a new coaching staff and a new front office enough runway to try to see what they can do. And I'm excited to be amongst those people. I think that it's fun to get to camp and be able to see Bears fans in their element. I mean, I don't know, when I was playing football and practicing, the idea of people like watching practice is like a really funny thing. But, you know, I'm so super excited to see these guys practice and just to see them up close and just to see how big some of these guys are. It's a lot of fun to like realize, oh yeah, these guys are giants. Or that guy's really fast. So it's just fun to be amongst your people. And then it's become now an opportunity to meet up with my friends that I write with that I've met through writing and podcasting, and so that's what I'm most excited about. And I know that's not a football take, but I do like getting into the rhythm and the tradition of getting back to going to camp every year. So I'm excited about that piece. Taylor mentioned offensive line battles. Lester mentioned offensive line battles. My wife's name is Leslie, so sorry about that. I think that's where a lot of the eyes are going to be. Lester, you've written about position battles throughout your summer series here. Can you run us through what you're seeing as the potential O-line battles? There's really only two spots that are settled at this point.
I mean, it's pretty much center with Lucas Patrick, left guard Cody Whitehair. Other than that, it's up in the air. I mean, I know the Bears have had, Sam Mustipher running at right guard, pretty much, for most of the offseason. Once Dakota Dozier went down with his ACL injury, Sam Mustipher took over that job full time. I just don't see him being the right guard guy all year. They brought in Michael Schofield today for a workout. Recording this on Sunday, so they worked him out. If the Bears sign him, he's an immediate upgrade at right guard. He would maybe be the best guy on the roster. I mean, he has that experience, and no one else really has that. I mean, he would come in and be that guy. He would help solidify the line. It's funny, one position could potentially get this line looking like where, as a fan, we're like, okay, they have stuff to work with because the tackles are still unsettled. Larry Borum, Tevin Jenkins, Braxton Jones. Those three guys are going to be battling for the left and the right side. I'm assuming going to go into the first day of training camp. It'll be Braxton Jones, the rookie, on the left side, Larry Borum on the right side. But I think once they start hitting, I think Tevin Jenkins, he will assert himself and show that he deserves to be in there somewhere. I just can't see a guy with that pedigree coming in and not being a starter somewhere. He just, based on his college tape and the small we saw him, a year ago, he's that dude. I mean, I think he'll be starting at some point.
Yeah, I think one of the criticisms of Ryan Poles, whether it's legitimate or not, is that he went after Ryan Bates. He signed it. Ryan Bates got multiple offers from clubs. He signed with the Bears. It was just that the Bills match. I think it was a little bit of a surprise to us that the Bills match, and it was certainly, I think, a surprise to Ryan Poles. I don't think he had much of a backup plan, and he did not address it in the draft. And so, you're in this situation now where maybe you bring in a free agent late, maybe you wait for cuts to bring somebody in because you're just not sure if you're going to if you have that on the roster right now. But Taylor, Lester mentioned three young tackles. Yeah, Braxton Jones is a 5th-round pick. I think he deserved to he probably has the talent to have gone a little higher, but because this was a large draft, he got pushed down to the 5th round. So I'm not saying 5th round is a pejorative, right? This is a guy that has talent, and he could certainly push for playing time early. Larry Borum played a lot of snaps last year. Tevin Jenkins didn't play that many snaps because he was coming back from that injury. And so you've got three young tackles battling for two positions. So these are going to be guys that you're going to be covering in your show.
Yeah, I'm honestly excited, and I know last year there were some question marks around Tevin, but I think, and this goes back to my coaching thing. Interested to see the coaching part aspect of this, but I agree with Lester when it comes to, I think Tevin is going to be starting at that left tackle spot personally. I don't know as much at who can like swing. I know Braxton can play left and right. I know he did play left and right in college, so he can kind of go play either of those and battle for both of those. I'm interested to see though if, let's say, Braxton does win one of those positions and Tevin's at another one, or Larry, can either of them play right guard? Is that a thing that you got? Is that a possibility?
I think of the three guys, I think Tevin Jenkins' his athletic profile, his size. I think of those three, he'd be your best fit to come inside the guard. But I don't know. I just think the Bears, they're comfortable letting him be the right tackle. I mean, that's how he's been all offseason. I mean, he's really only taking reps on the right side. Larry Borum has been the guy taking reps on both sides. They kind of split it. The first 6 practices was Borum on the left. The next 6 practices of OTAs, he was on the right. So the way I see it shaping up, I think Braxton Jones has a good chance to win the left tackle spot. I think Larry Borum, they could be having him primed to be the swing guy. But again, once the pads go on, we'll see what happens, because that could change a lot.
Yeah, because I was hearing a lot during OTAs and minicamp that one name I heard the most out of the offensive line is actually Braxton Jones, and they were saying how much they would expect him to kind of be that number one at first, and it's going to be a battle against Braxton rather than what I thought it was going to be, kind of vice versa. But it's good to hear to me that there's guys to battle. There's position battles happening on the offensive line, because there was just times last year where it felt like there was nowhere for the Bears to go.
Yeah, and I think that when you kind of get down to it, you have a new regime that just picked a guy in the draft, and clearly that is in the mold of the type of guy that they want. So if they feel like they saw a role for Braxton Jones and they used a draft pick on him, that's their guy. And then you have 2 guys that were picked by the last regime, the last Ryan and Matt, and so you have a situation where those guys aren't their guys. They're not their dudes. And so there really is, potential for those guys to lose favor where they were in good standing last year. So that'll be interesting. I'm actually going to kind of use that argument here a little bit later for another segment. But again, so that we always start off in the trenches on this show. So we're going to talk a lot about the offensive line this year. I have a feeling there's going to be plenty of that, but we also want to always talk about Justin Fields, because, I've described this as, yes, there are other questions and they're important, but this is like the last question in a game show that's worth 1,000,000 points, making all of the previous questions not really relevant. This season is all about Justin Fields and his development. And so when we walk into camp this week, we're going to see Justin Fields be the unquestioned number 1 guy, which, Lester, when we were at camp last year, he took 0 snaps with the first team. And so I just want to start off with, the mentality of walking in as this is his team. This offense is going to be shaped around him. How big do you think that is for his development?
Yeah, I think we kind of saw that happening when the season ended. I mean, the stuff he did with the media, you kind of just saw, a different type of personality come out, where he knows he's the guy now. I mean, he's, Andy Dalton's gone, Nick Foles now is gone. So, he's the guy there. There is no competition to take a spot. I mean, the whole offseason last year was mishandled. It was just I understood the plan Matt Nagy tried to put in place, but the pieces around it were just not correct. I mean, he was basing it off what happened with Alex Smith. Different situation, Dalton, Fields, those guys should have had a battle. They should have at the very least let Fields get some time with the ones, because we saw when Fields finally had to start because of an injury, he didn't look very good. I mean, the offense wasn't doing anything with him in there. Like you guys mentioned, they didn't build it around him. It was still an Andy Dalton style offense. It was just, last year's was just a mismanagement of the quarterback spot. This year, Justin Fields, he's the number 1. He's the alpha mentality. He has it. He's always been that guy. He's been the dude everywhere he's been. If he's not the guy, he becomes the guy. And I think, this year, we're seeing that. And I think, the coaches believe in him. I think his teammates all believe in him. So I'm excited to see him in camp, just to see how he carries himself, to see him get those reps with the ones, because that makes a big deal.
Taylor, is there something that you like need to see out of this camp to make you feel like, okay, I feel pretty good about what they're doing with Justin for the season? Is there some sort of report that you're looking for to make you say, oh, okay, yep, I'm happy with that?
Yeah, I'm just going to backtrack a minute because I do think that you started seeing progress towards the end of last season, and that was in spite of everything going on in that moment and with the offense. So that already gave me a little hope. But I do want to see, and we talked about, I've heard them say already that they're going to kind of build. I've heard it's going to be a run heavy offense, but then they're also going to build it around Justin in the aspect of he had one of the highest, if not the highest, passer ratings outside of the pocket, and get him out there, get him on the move. That's what Justin's good at. I do want to see more plays kind of like schemed in that direction. I want to see better ball security, and not with the fumbles, because I don't think that a lot of the interceptions, we see all the charts too of he was one of the most unlucky quarterbacks when it comes to some of his interceptions. And if you're watching the games, you saw that how many times when it would like ricochet off someone's hand into the corner's hand, and you're like, oh gosh, here we go. But ball security, when it came to him just running around, kind of flailing the ball around, caused some issues too in certain games. I do think that also got better as season progressed. But I think if I wanted to focus on a couple things, I'd say I want to see them building that, letting him be a little free, get outside of the pocket. I don't want him to have to feel like he has to launch the ball 40 yards down the field every single time. The short game works sometimes, especially if you are using those running backs the way that the Bears want to use their running backs. So between that and just ball security, those are the two things that I want to see the most improvement in.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'd like to see him develop a rapport with some of these guys. You have a lot of wide receivers. I think 13 wide receivers are coming into camp or something like that. They're going to keep 6 on the roster. There's going to keep a couple on the practice squad. But I'd like to see some level of connection build between between Justin and somebody other than Darnell Mooney, right?
Yeah.
So if that's Velus Jones is going to make this roster. It'd be great if they could earn a connection early. That would be great. But is Tajay Sharp? Is he going to maybe step up? Who knows, right? Like I don't know. There's a lot of names that are very similar tier to me.
Yeah.
So
N'Keal Harry.
yeah. So N'Keal Harry, right? So one of these guys that are right now, they're just Dante Pettis, right? Like guys that have some level of pedigree or have a level of experience in the league. Are they going to come in? Are they going to be ready to take a target share? Are they going to be able to develop a rapport with Justin? And are these going to be guys that he's going to be able to count on? And that, that's the kind of stuff that helps, that is created during camp. And so if you can create that foundation in camp, that translates into the regular season, which is what we lacked last year. We did not see that last year. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. So anytime I can see any wide receiver, again, they can't throw every ball to Darnell Mooney. So at some point we've got to develop some secondary and tertiary targets here. So let's see what those are. So
and off that real quick, because I think in addition, like that connection with Cole Kmet is important too. Like I want to see Cole Kmet and Fields in the end zone, like in the red zone, so much more than we got to see that last year. And I know Jimmy Graham was kind of the one they'd throw in there a lot, but like when they started clicking at certain points, and you're like, it's there, we just need to pull it out. We need to see it a little bit more.
He had to get something for that $8 million or whatever it was that Jimmy Graham was making. So
a lot of it is just the trust factor. I mean, there was not a trust factor with Justin Fields last year because partly he didn't run with the one. So him and Mooney worked out a lot. So that was the guy he trusted. When he finally had a chance to go with the ones, there was no rapport with Allen Robinson. There was nothing there with Goodwin or Demir Bird, because he didn't have a chance to work with those guys. So, this offseason, he's done a ton of work with Mooney. He's done a lot of work with Kmet. He's done stuff with Pringle and Jones as well. So, they've been building it all offseason. Let's see that build through camp. Let's see that trust, because you have the guys you can go to, you can count on. I mean, if it's not always going to be a perfect pocket. And like you said, you can't always go to Mooney. Yeah. And then with Mooney, he's a little slight. He's only 5'10". He's not a guy you really want to just chuck it up to him. So if Cole Kmet at 6'6", if he can be the guy that Fields says, hey, I trust him. If I put the ball in a spot, he'll go get the ball for me. Use his frame and box out. He's got to find those guys he can trust besides Mooney.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right. Before we get to our Three Bears segment, let's take a quick break and let's let somebody pay the bills. All right, we're back. So let's talk Three Bears. So we're shifting this category for today a little bit because no one deserves a cold bowl of porridge yet. No one deserves the hot bowl of porridge yet. No one's done anything, right? So we're gonna each name three bears with the most to prove in this training camp. You can define that however you want, but give me your player and your rationale. We'll go one at a time around the room. Lester, start with you.
I'm going to start at wide receiver. I'm going to go Byron Pringle for my first guy. It's part of what I just talked about. You got to find a guy you can trust. The Bears brought in a lot of guys. You mentioned Sharp. You mentioned Pettis, Harry. David Moore is in camp as well. A lot of guys that have some experience in the league. But of all the guys they brought in as free agents or via trade, Pringle's the guy that's, they paid a decent penny to. I mean, it's only a 1-year deal, though. So it's not like they trusted him long term. They brought him in on a 1-year deal, but I think it was like $3 or $4 million. So he's going to be starting for you. My guess is in the slot. I think that's probably his best place within how this offense is constructed. So, can Byron Pringle take a step up from being the third or fourth option in KC, to being the second option possibly in Chicago? He has big playability, but is that because of who he had around him in KC, or is that because of who he is as a player? It's a lot of question marks around the entire receiving core. But if Byron Pringle proves that he's a legitimate, second threat, I think that solves, some of the problems the offense has.
Yeah, absolutely. Good pick there. Taylor, what about you? Who's your first one?
I'm going to go Eddie Jackson.
Okay.
I think that this is a very big prove it year for Eddie. I personally 2 years ago loved Eddie Jackson. I bought an Eddie Jackson jersey because I was just like pumped. And then we saw a kind of decline. And Ryan Poles and Eberflus both decided he deserved another chance. Ryan Poles saw something in whatever he watched or whatever he heard, because I remember after the season, and they said he was pretty much like, I'm not going to use this last season as what's going to determine of who I'm keeping and who I'm getting rid of, because this is just kind of, it is not going to work that way. It was just a lot of negativity going around on the Bears roster last year, and there was a lot of people that kind of started giving up at certain points, I think. Eddie Jackson has the ability to be that free safety that we need. We've seen it in previous years. And I think that this year is not only determining like what he could be in the Bears in general, but his place in the NFL. So and also now they spent a lot of, not a ton of money, but they spent some draft picks and some time on the free agency getting that secondary depth built up. So now there's not technically like direct competition for him, but there is depth there that people can work on, and kind of battle him for that position. And it's not just Eddie's anymore.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, they drafted Jaquan Brisker. So if Brisker comes in and he's really good, they may feel like, look, we can get by with Brisker and somebody else, and not need to keep that premium contract with Eddie. For me, I'm going to take the free square on the bingo board since none of you mentioned it on the first. It's Tevin Jenkins. I mean, this is the guy that was drafted by the last regime. He has not had a great offseason so far with the reports that we have heard. There's practices that aren't open to the beat reporters, but the beat reporters that have been writing about the practices they've had access to, he's not running with the ones. Again, nothing really matters until the pads come on. You don't know where he's at in terms of health or anything, but they're not committed to this guy like the last regime would be. And so they don't necessarily need to go throw Tevin Jenkins out as a starter if they don't feel like he's the right guy or if he's the right fit. And so he needs to come in and really start throwing bodies when the pads come on. And so I think that he has, of everybody at camp, I think Tevin Jenkins has the most to prove right now.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, that was my number 2 guy, Jenkins. He's just, like I said, he's got to throw bodies, and he kind of plays like that. I mean, he has that mean streak. You don't want to see it too much in training camp because that's your teammate, but he's got to show his edge. He has to show his nastiness. It has to come through because he knows that's what Ryan Poles wants. Ryan Poles wants guys that play with an edge. That's the big selling point he had with Lucas Patrick. He talked about Lucas Patrick coming in. He called him a prick. I mean, he said that's the kind of guy he wants on his line. He wants a guy that plays nasty, plays mean. He will get after you. And that's Tevin Jenkins. Last year, Tevin Jenkins, when he finally had a chance to play, he was awful. that first game. He came in for Jason Peters, I think it was, and he didn't look very good. The next week he started, and all the mistakes he made the first game, he cleaned up. I was so impressed with his one start he had last year. I think I graded him with like a 90 for that game. He just looked so good in that one game, and then of course the next game he started, he got hurt right away, and then he didn't really play. I mean, he could have played, but of course Matt Nagy didn't want to play the young guys. He wanted to keep putting Jason Peters out there, which that's a whole other problem there. But we should have saw more of Jenkins down the stretch. I just think he's that dude. I really do. I think he's got the ability to do it, but he's got to prove it.
Yeah, I agree. He has to prove it, and he has to stay healthy, because obviously those are two things we saw right away. I mean, that draft, when it was like the Fields Jenkins, I was so excited, and I was like, yes, we got a quarterback. We got a guy to protect the quarterback. Perfect combination. And then it just didn't go the way you wanted. But I think that obviously he got injured, so that it didn't start the way he wanted in general. That first game, like you said, it was rough. It kind of, you were a little scared. You took a step back, but then I saw progress. And I think that progress, like you said, when you saw right away that he can see what he's doing wrong and fix it. And then now with that in an extra step, you now have new coaches who I think are not technically sold on you, because they brought some guys in here that they may want in that position, but there's guys here that may care a little bit more and put a little more emphasis on that development part for him. So Tevin was definitely one of the ones that I would put on my list also.
Okay, so you two both had Tevin as one of your three?
I didn't end up putting him on mine.
Okay, so Taylor, since Lester, that was your number two guy.
That was my number two guy. He was on my list.
We'll go to you, Taylor. Who's next on your list?
My next is Montgomery. I think that I love David Montgomery, but I think that we've seen in the NFL how you can find running backs. Running backs are not the most difficult guy to find. He had some injury issues last year, and a lot of the things that you see on David Montgomery, even I know all these Madden rankings that have been coming out have been just like, some of them are absolutely insane. But on one of them, I even saw James Robinson for the Jags on there, and Montgomery not on the list. And I was kind of like, I just feel like in every aspect, Montgomery had proven that he at least had proven that he's a better running back. Will he be in the future? I'm not totally sure, because I also like James Robinson, but I think it's big for David Montgomery. I'm not totally convinced that the Bears would like throw a bunch of money at him after this season. But I do think for him, especially with the Bears wanting to have a run heavy kind of offense, it's pretty much between him and Khalil Herbert to figure that out. So I think for David Montgomery's future also, this is a very important season for him.
Yeah, and my next player would be Thomas Graham Jr. So again, you have a player that, sorry, Lester, if I'm stealing your guys.
That's okay.
We are on the same page quite a bit. So the way that I think of this is that you have a player that was chosen by the last regime. The new regime comes in and they sign a guy. And so they signed Tavon Young to come in and compete at that position. So Tavon Young's had trouble staying on the field with health in recent years. So maybe that'll play itself out anyway. But Thomas Graham Jr. didn't have a long runway to show what he has. You don't know when it clicked for him. I mean, I'm not just going to put that on the last year coaching staff and blast him for that. We really don't know when exactly it clicked for him. He may have been, a little bit slow getting around to stuff, and as a rookie, particularly since he missed his senior year with an opt out. So I'm not putting that on the last staff, but when he did get in games, he popped, right? It was like, wow, this guy's got some juice. This is an interesting guy. And so you hope that he has a role. You have an established corner in Jalen Johnson. You have the first pick in Ryan Poles' draft was another corner in Kyler Gordon. And now you have this guy, Thomas Graham, who a lot of people I think were excited about on that little bit of data that he gave us in games. Can he win a starting job? Can he come in and be the nickel? Can he come in and be a contributor in this team? Because the last regime drafted you. So that to me is a guy that has a lot to prove in this camp. And hopefully he can solidify himself as a contributor and someone that the Bears can count on down the road.
Yeah, that was my number 3 guy. Graham, you mentioned they brought in Young. Young, like 3 years ago, he was the top paid nickel in the game, I believe. So, I mean, he has some experience in the NFL, Some injuries have happened. That's kind of why he fell out of favor. He played last year, the all 17 games in Baltimore, but it wasn't the best year for him. He was still kind of coming back from stuff. So, the Bears saw enough to bring him in. He was in sort of to be their top nickel at first, but Graham kind of, kept working. And eventually by the end of the offseason, he was their top nickel guy. So again, we're going to go back to last year. Thomas Graham, the game he played and started, thought he looked great. He looked really good that game. Then, of course, what does Matt Nagy do? You're back to the bench, kid. Like, what's the point? At that point, everyone knew Nagy was gone. He had to know he was gone. At some point, someone should have stepped in and said, hey, for the franchise's sake, let's get these young guys in here. You guys are going nowhere. But, that's what you get when you keep a regime 1 year too long. They're coaching for their jobs. They want to get their wins. They are afraid to take their lumps with young guys because they want to make sure that their record is as good as possible. They were a bad team last year. I want to see Thomas Graham. If you just imagine how we'd feel now as Bears fans, if we would have had Tevin Jenkins, play those last few games, Thomas Graham play those last few games, both showed us some more promise. I mean, think as Bears fans, we'd be more excited for them going out to the next year. We didn't see that. Graham looked good. If he can lock down that nickel, and the cool thing is he took that job. I mean, Young was brought in to have it. He came in with the pedigree. Thomas Graham took that job during the OTAs. Hopefully he keeps that. If he keeps that and keeps those guys on the bench, really helps solidify the secondary.
Is Kyler Gordon going to be battling for that specific position too?
Kyler would be the other outside corner.
Okay.
If he's healthy, which, right now as Bears fans, who knows, because he didn't practice the last few OTAs. The Bears say it's fine, just a minor injury. We've heard this story before. Yeah. So hopefully Kyler Gordon does not end up on the PUP list next week, which, we've seen happen too as well. So,
yeah, no, I get it. I like that. I think the secondary this year is going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to watch in camp. So I'm interested to see like what you guys bring back from that secondary side, just because they're with the depth that they added this offseason. I think it's going to be actually pretty decent secondary.
Yeah, if they click early, they could shut down this underwhelming pedigree wide receiving core, right? I mean, that could be a storyline that emerges, is that, hey, the secondary looks really good. They're really shutting this down. They're not really giving a lot of open windows, just because the pedigree of the secondary is much higher than the pedigree of the wide receivers. That's not what, it doesn't always come down to that, but a lot of times that sort of wins out in camp when you have that. Those guys going against each other. So Taylor, what about you? Who's your third player that you had identified?
My third was Fields.
Okay.
Yeah. I just think, it's hard not to say him, especially because I feel like last season was a little bit of wash in certain aspects. So this season, I think we're truly expecting like a pretty decent sized leap. And if that doesn't happen, I think there will be a little bit of worries towards the end of the season. But I think a lot of it comes down to those connections he builds. And some of these other guys that we just named, like Pringle maybe being a guy, Halas maybe being a guy. But I think it's Justin Fields it's an important time to it's an important year to kind of prove something. Kyler just got paid in his third year, so
yeah, you never know.
If we wait too long, we're going to be paying him like $70 million. So.
Well, at some point it's worth it, right? That's if he proves to be the guy, then it doesn't really matter what you sign him to, because it's gonna pay off, especially what they brings to the franchise overall. Maybe a franchise that's gonna move to Arlington Heights and open a new stadium. There's the value of a franchise quarterback with modern skill set probably does not have a price tag that you could exceed with an NFL contract. But my third guy, I kind of went back and forth on a couple ideas. I'll just mention that I thought about Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet's not going to have. He doesn't need to prove anything in camp to be the starter. It's a prove it year for him, but he doesn't necessarily have to worry too much about camp per se. I thought about someone like Daz Newsome, who was taken, last year. There's a ton of wide receivers. The skill set that he brings is going to have a lot of competition. I see Daz Newsome likely being on the practice squad this year. I didn't really feel like that was as interesting of an answer. And then I thought about the defensive line a little bit, and I want to talk about Travis Gibson for just a little bit in this third spot, because I think that he has something to prove in that he's going to be on the field. He's going to be in the rotation. That's not in question. but they did sign Muhammad from the Colts. You know
Mm-hmm.
that Eberflus knows who he is and feels comfortable with him. Robert Quinn is the one of the best players on the team. You know, Roquan's probably the best, you know, player right now on the team. Robert Quinn's right there. Robert Quinn's going to have plenty of snaps.
Mm-hmm.
But if Travis Gibson shows that he is the guy, that he can be the dude and he can replace the snaps that were taken by Quinn and Mack, then that should give Ryan Poles all of the reason that he needs to move Robert Quinn for an in-season trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, you hear enough about that. And I don't know if that's like analyst driven, like speculation, and it just becomes so much that we just kind of think that that's what he's aiming for. You know, Robert Quinn was like, well, fine, I'm not going to report and maybe you should trade me or something. Like there was talk, like kind of buzz around that. So there's at least some truth, I think, to the idea that he might be moved in a Von Miller type move by the trade deadline. And I think that the comfort level of doing that would be enhanced if Travis Gibson proves that he is a guy. He is like a bona fide starter that can take starter reps through an entire season. And so I'm really interested to see what he looks like this year. Really coming into his own. Does he have the counter moves? You know, is he going to take advantage of young offensive linemen in the one-on-one drills, right? Like, is he going to really kind of show like I'm here, I'm established, and so I'm excited to see what Gibson looks like.
No, I like that a lot. I think that anytime Travis was in the game last year, you were saying his name, and I think that's important, and in a positive way, not like, oh, he just let someone pancake him. It was, and for me to say that when just like casually watching a game, not when I go back and rewatch it and really focus on certain things, me just casually watching the game at the bar, and I'm like, man, this Travis kid, like pretty good. And you're not completely noticing that, you know, what some of your other guys, Khalil Max, when he was injured or stuff like that, it wasn't like a complete decline where you were like, okay, we're completely lost. There were moments where he was making plays and he was like causing a little chaos on the line, and that's important. You want to see those guys that are just going after it, and it looked like he was.
Yeah, I think Gibson had 7 or 8 sacks last year. I think he had like 5 forced fumbles. So, you know, he made impact when he's in there, like you said. And, you know, that's something I talked about in my article about the defensive ends is there's a lot of a young talent on this roster. And if these guys step up, including Gibson, you know, that'll be more enticing to trade a guy like Quinn. And, you know, he didn't show up the entire offseason. He decided to skip all of it, even the mandatory stuff he wasn't there for. You know, veterans report to camp at Halas Hall on Tuesday, I believe. So, you know, if he's going to show up is definitely something to monitor. So if he decides to do a holdout, it may force Poles' hand. You'd rather see, you know, the team, you know, see the young guy step up before having to trade him, but you know, their hand may be forced, and a guy like Gibson has to step up and, you know, prove that, you know, what we saw last year wasn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
He can keep this going, and I think he can. I mean, he was a defensive lineman in college. You know, he was new to the spot he was playing with the Bears, you know, in the last regime, you know, so him putting his hand back in the dirt, I think he likes that. I think he wants that. It's more of an attacking defense from him now. So again, I'm excited to see what he does as well.
Lot to look forward to. Really excited for it. Let's kind of close out the podcast here and just remind you guys, if you're listening to this, if you can get an opportunity to hop on YouTube, head over to Second City Gridiron, hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. Lester has started to accumulate a package that he is going to give away to someone who is within the first 1,000 subscribers. We're going to have a ton of content on Second City Gridiron YouTube this season. You're going to be able to find a lot of fun stuff. So please go there, help us out, subscribe to that. The new podcast, Making Monsters, starring Taylor, is going to be out first episode this coming week.
Yes, correct. Thursday, I believe we're doing Thursday.
Okay, very exciting. Lester and I are going to be cutting a number of camp reports. Other guys might jump in and do some of them. I'll try to do a majority of them. I think we got at least 6 of the episodes covered already.
Yeah.
You know, so we're really excited about that. There's 12 open practices, so we'll try to shoot for covering as many of those as possible. The Hopium Den, my summer project, has 2 more episodes. I thought we were going to have a 10 episode arc. It does not look like that's going to happen. It's going to be 9. I did cut an episode today with a very special guest. That'll probably be episode 9. Episode 8 will come out on Wednesday. That features Lester,
nice.
and EJ and Patty, the three people that I have collaborated with most at Windy City Gridiron. And that was a very fun conversation that we had last week. So excited to share that with you guys. Anything else going on that we should mention on the website or anything else that's going on, Lester?
I mean, just camp. I mean, camp is going to be huge. The podcast, the video channel is going to be popping, but we're going to have so much news that's going to come so fast where, it's like with most outlets at this time of year, we're excited, because the last month has been kind of quiet as far as real news. I mean, yeah, there's some guys getting arrested, but that happens all the time. So
we got plenty of those.
Yeah. So we're excited. It's going to be some actual, honest to goodness stuff to report on. And, the brand new shows coming too next week. So, we're excited. We just did add Greg Gabriel. So he is now writing for the site, 30 plus years as a scout in the NFL for the Bears, for the Giants. I believe he's involved in the East-West Shrine game right now. So it's cool getting his perspective on what's going on from a scouting side of things. And that's what he's going to kind of add to the site. He already has a couple articles out there talking about what happens during camp from a player evaluation standpoint, which is some stuff I didn't know what goes on there. So it's cool seeing that happen. He's going to kind of do the same thing moving here forward as the Bears kind of, have to look at the new guys and how they are going to evaluate and build that 53-man roster. So it's kind of cool seeing that perspective from a guy like Greg Gabriel.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have him on the pod at some point well.
For sure.
Share his perspective on this channel. But Taylor, welcome to the team. We are really excited to have you, and we're really excited to see what you can do with Making Monsters.
I'm super excited. I have a question for you guys also. How do you feel about the orange helmets?
Oh, the orange helmets. Yeah. So I don't know if you saw today, but the Bears website announced that they're going to wear orange helmets for 2 games against the Commanders and in the middle of October. And then at the end of the month on a road game against the Cowboys. So they'll wear the orange helmets with the orange jersey. So that means they're going to wear the orange jerseys twice. I'm happy. Now, did they nail it? Is it the perfect helmet? No. Like there are better versions of the helmet. I would like to not have the wishbone C. I would like to move to a bear or a bear paw or bear, something, bear marks. I don't care. Give me more bear and less C's. But I'm so happy that they embrace the idea of using the alternate color and not just do something boring like a white helmet. And I know that's going to make some people upset because some people like the white helmet. I am not one of those people. I'm happy that they went out, they tried the orange helmet. And so I'm a fan.
That's why you're wearing the orange hat right now.
It is.
That's what made me think of it.
I am not a fan of the orange look to myself. I just think I like the jerseys. I don't like the jerseys either. I like the navy for the alternates, the old school the old school monsters. Those jerseys from the 40s. I like the ones they had from the 30s, the white ones. So I'm not a fan of the orange. Just looks too Dumb and Dumber to me.
I love it, but personally, like my favorite color is orange. So it's just like all like my favorite football team and my favorite color in one. I love it. Did you see the video of Bayless like drawing the bear?
Yeah.
We could just use his logo on the helmet.
That should be the logo. I mean, if they're going to do something different, let's do something different. I mean, if it would have been a bear, then maybe I would be like, okay, I'm okay with the alternate, but just the same thing. Come on, get out.
I mean, at least they flipped the color and it's a navy C. But I do want to say that the cool thing about having throwback logos is when they'll bring back merch and all this stuff, and it's cool, right? Well, if you keep the same logo for 50, 60, 70 years, you don't get any more throwback stuff. You have to change and refresh. People say, oh, it's classic. It's not been around for 100 years. Like the Bears changed their logo consistently.
They've had like 5 or 6 logos in the history.
Logos and alternative logos and all this like fun stuff that support the evolution and the artwork. And that's how you then can look back and say, I kind of like that bear that they used in the 80s and 90s. I don't know. I might have hated it then, but now I'm like, oh, it's kind of a cool little mini throwback. And I like that bear. I want something with that bear on it. Anything that you can do to try to wrestle more of my money out of my pocket and into the McCaskey's pocket should be a priority for them. So I'm all for it. I don't think it's perfect. I think we need more bear presence on the side of the helmet, but I'm happy that they did something and it wasn't boring like white.
Agreed.
All right, we'll get out of here with the podcast. We'll stick around for some Q&A on the video, but thank you for listening. And we're really excited. We are going to be cranking up the content with camp now. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. All right. That's the podcast. Let's see what we got for comments. Those of you that are sticking with us, if you have anybody have any questions, let us know. Chris says, yes, absolutely. Tevin at left tackle. So Chris agrees with Taylor that Tevin at left tackle would be the play. Whereas I think a lot of what we heard was Tevin at right tackle. We'll see. I mean, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if they drafted Braxton Jones saying like, we think this guy can play left and start right away.
I don't understand why they moved Tevin Jenkins to left tackle in the first place. I know that's when as soon as his college year ended, he started working on the left side, which I get it. That's the premier spot in the NFL for the offensive line. He wanted to prepare and show scouts he could play the left side, but in the modern NFL, pass rushers come on both sides. It's like you got to be good off the edge, right and left. So if it was me, I would have kept Jenkins at the right side, last year. The fact that he was moved, that's fine, but now we moved back into the right side, which it seems like the Bears are content. They've said that it's open where he ends up. It's all on the table right now, but they're also saying that so far he's only been a right tackle. So at some point, maybe guards in play, but I mean, if he would have been staying left tackle, I'm fine with it. I think he's fine. But like I say all the time, wherever you put Tevin Jenkins, leave him alone. Let him stay there. Let him grow there. Yeah, forever, for the rest of his life.
Chris said thought he played well there versus Minnesota. So
that's the game. That's the game I graded.
That's the game. Yeah, he had a good game there. Don, who is
gotta be a Lions fan there.
He's a Lions fan. I do want to read it. He says Detroit versus everybody, which okay, Don. Like every team feels that way. Don't feel like you're some unique snowflake in the NFL landscape. Every team feels that way. Every fan base feels that way. And by the way, the national media has been so kind to Detroit this offseason. Everybody is excited about what you guys are doing in Detroit, and they're killing the Bears. So let's throw away the victim card for a little while here. So we coming, beware, hard knocks in 2 weeks. The world will take notice. Look, Don, I called the Detroit Lions being on Hard Knocks like in the middle of the year last year. I talked to one of our colleagues on a Bears Over Beers, and I said, hey, Lions on Hard Knocks next year. Like, we're going to do this, right? This Dan Campbell regime on Hard Knocks would be fun and fascinating. So I called it very early, and I saw Dan Campbell at the Senior Bowl. I stood about 3 feet from him, and I just wanted to go get the man his Starbucks order, which is, legendary at this point. 2 shots of espresso poured into a coffee, and 2 of those, right? And the man didn't have his coffee yet that morning. He just looked tired and sad. And so no, I look, honestly, I hope the Lions improve. I hope that they're good. I would like any other team to take over the NFC North. The Bears aren't ready to do that quite yet. So if Detroit wants to pop off and they want to knock Green Bay back and win the division, I'll root for them. Honest to God, I will root for them to do that this year.
Twice a year against the Packers, we'll cheer for them.
I'll absolutely do that, and I'll cheer for them against the Vikings. I hope that they do well, and you know why? Because I am not afraid of Jared Goff in the long run.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to be good enough to to get yourself out of range of drafting a quarterback. So take the short-term little baby success that you're going to have and enjoy it, because eventually you're not going to have the guy.
Yeah.
So
that's like some trash talk from you there. That's beautiful.
I think that's what it's like for the first time in a while. Like, obviously, depending what we see out of Justin, but we think Justin's the guy, most of us. And the Bears could technically be in the best place in the North for the long term, because I don't believe in Jared Goff. I don't believe in Kirk Cousins, and Aaron Rodgers is a few years away from being out. So we have like the clearest path to like a decent, at least next decade.
Yeah, it's not going to happen this year, but I think that there's a real chance. And yeah, I mean, at some point, Aaron Rodgers is going to be like, you know what? I just love ghee. I love the clarified butter life. And this is what I'm just going to do now. And I don't have any time for football because I'm doing, these crazy cleanses. And so he's not going to come back. So yeah, once that happens, the North will open up. Chris asked about Schofield. We talked about Schofield earlier in the pod. Lester said that if they do end up signing him, he has the potential to be the best offensive lineman on the team, and that's not that crazy. I mean, there's still a lot of potential, obviously, for the young guys to come in and show out and all that. But I mean, we talk about Cody Whitehair. We didn't talk about Cody Whitehair in the pod, but we talked about Cody Whitehair's left guard. And I think there's a little bit of memory loss of what Cody Whitehair has looked like in the last couple of years, because this isn't Cody Whitehair 2018 where it was like, oh man, this is a good player. Cody Whitehair last year was not very good. He finished 2019 pretty strong, and I think there was a lot of hope that he would carry that momentum forward in last year, but he was not that good of a player last year, and I don't know if that was because it was falling down around him. And that really impacted him, or if his game has actually kind of fallen off, or if there was an injury that he didn't disclose and we didn't know about. That was my suspicion. But I don't know that I've gone and watched Schofield.
No, I haven't watched a lot.
Yeah. So I don't know necessarily have like a detailed scouting report, idea of what that looks like. He's definitely a name though. He's a guy that I knew was an offensive lineman in the league. Adding pedigree and talent to a position group that has not a lot of question marks and needs more pedigree and talent is a welcome situation.
Yes.
I think right now it's Sam Mustard right guard starting, and then I think his backup maybe Zach Thomas, the rookie right now. So I mean, I think Zach Thomas has the potential, but I would much rather see a veteran in that spot. I think Sam Mustard is probably going to be on the roster somewhere as a backup. I think it's fine. It is what it is. He has the experience, but you can get a better starter at right guard. It just helps. It brings the whole line together.
Yeah, I think that I think ideally, these young guys really do show up and show out, right? So, you have a guy like Braxton Jones that comes in, and again, 5th rounder, but maybe he was really more like a 3rd rounder in most drafts. He comes in and he's, hey, yeah, let's start the young guy. Tevin comes in, throws bodies. He's the right tackle. Borum's the swing tackle, which is what we've kind of wanted for him for a while. And then you got a young guy like Zach Thomas. If they don't sign a guy like Schofield that comes in and surprises and takes over that guard spot, and Mustapher is kind of your top interior backup. I don't want Mustapher starting at guard. I don't see how that translates well for him. I don't think he had the functional strength to be an effective center. So I'd be surprised that he could. I mean, you can kind of get away with it a little bit at center, but you can't get away with lacking that functional strength at guard. Yeah. So that would really surprise me if he can win that job. But again, counting on late round rookies, that's tough. I mean, they did it last year in Kansas City. But that's, with Trey Smith, but he dropped because of injury reasons, not because of pedigree. I mean, he was a good player coming out of Tennessee. So, got another question. Jason Peters for left tackle. He's not coming here. I mean, I know that he did the favor last year, but he did a favor for the offensive line coach that's no longer here. That's how he stopped fishing and came and played. He's keeping himself in shape. That, we know that. But if I'm Jason Peters, I'm keeping myself in shape for a mid-season acquisition for somebody who is in competition,
like the Rams or the Chiefs. So
somebody who's going to make a run, right?
Yeah. I feel like a full season is difficult for Jason Peters too. He needs that. Let me help towards the end. Just play that last 5-6 games.
I think he's older than me. I think he's like
39 last year. So, and I don't know when his birthday was, but
yeah, I feel like his birthday is like 2 months before mine.
Okay.
So I think he's like this much older than me. So I am all for players that are older than me to still be in the league. But I know when like Brady retires, it's over for me. So.
Oh yeah.
But no, I mean, that's kind of the Gronk plan right now, right? Like Gronk's not older than me, but Gronk's not going to play early on. But at some point, they're going to put the Gronk symbol out, and he's going to be like, I'm here the whole time. Just I was on a boat drinking rum, right? And so he'll come and help Tom try to get another ring. But I think that's probably what he should be doing. I think he should be kind of waiting, seeing how the season unfolds, and seeing if anybody gets an injury and it needs him.
Gronk doesn't want to practice in the summer. Like he's like, I'll be here later. Like,
I'm sorry, who wants to practice in Florida heat?
Yeah, nobody.
No.
There was already I think it was last season or the season before, but they were like doing virtual workouts and he was just changing his shirt. He did all the workouts in one day, but changed his shirt.
I saw
So the
that.
coach thought he was working out every day. I'm like, he's smarter than we think.
People think Gronk's stupid. He's one of the smartest people out there.
Yeah.
I think it's all an act.
Yeah.
He's I've enjoyed the Rob Gronkowski experience. I think he's fun. He's a great player. I'm all for more Gronk content. Even his terrible commercials are entertaining.
Tide Pods.
Well, that's it for questions. So we'll let everybody get back to their Sunday plans. But really, thanks everybody for joining us. And this is gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun this year, doing live streams and talking Bears. And like I'm really excited to shape the conversation about this football team because this is not about wins and losses. We do not need to get freaked out about, oh man, they're only going to win 4 games. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Like if they end up with a high pick next year, that's actually a pretty good position to be in, right? You don't want useless wins on a bad football team, more than just morale building. It's not about wins and losses this year. It's about development and it's about how they're using those snaps. So I'm excited to talk with you guys about it. I think we've got a really fun approach. I think we've got a good schedule that we're lining up. So it kicks off now, man. Like we're in it.
Yeah.
Like practice is starting. We're going to be there. So really excited about that. And excited to share all that with you guys.
Yeah, same. I'm pumped. Football season almost here.
Let's go. Let's do it.